What is up, y'all? I'm Benjamin Outdoors, and this is my channel.
So, we got something new. The Firstest CT 2050. This is another welder from YESWELDER, and this is one of the most versatile and capable machines so far they make. This thing does stick, which is not a surprise, most machines do stick. It also does TIG, AC and DC, so you can actually weld aluminum with it, which is nice. And it actually has the ability to use a amperage control, like a foot pedal or a finger control. Doesn't come with it, but you can buy it separately if you want to be able to have more control. It also has pulse functions. I might try to see if my Everlast foot pedal actually works with this machine, and if it doesn't, I might have to buy a separate one, because I just like that extra control of the amperage when I'm welding, especially like aluminum. This thing also has a plasma cutter with a built-in air compressor. Now, I haven't tested it out yet, so I don't know if you have to add extra air if you're doing thicker cuts, but we'll have to see if it actually can handle some thicker stuff with the onboard air compressor or not in a little bit, because I'll be actually doing some thicker stuff on my truck in a little bit to test this thing out. So anyway, let's start opening it up. They also sent me a 20-foot extension cord. Now, this is an 8-gauge extension cord, so I can use the full capability of this machine anywhere in the garage. The full amperage out of this machine, because this thing is such a thick cable. So it's basically just like you're extending your actual plug further out. It's not like some thin gauge. So it's really nice. So let's look into that first. Oh, it's thick. It is hefty. So let's start opening it up. Hopefully the machine's not damaged. There's a couple dents in the actual box, but hopefully they packaged it well enough to where the shipper didn't damage it. Ooh. To be honest, this is like 12 gauge. So I guess that 8 gauge is excessive, because this plug for the actual machine significantly smaller. I mean, it's like a third of the size almost. Maybe this one's just really well insulated, but this is definitely overkill, I feel like, if it can get all the amperage it needs to out of this cord. Do accessories first. It's got quite a few things in the back of this machine. It's got gas in, gas out. Now this one is going to be your shielding gas probably for TIG. On-off button, input AC 110, 220. Arc success, it's at 1 to 2 control switch. 3 to 4 arc success is what it says. 2 cooling fans. This one actually has a matte black look. My Firstest MP 200 is actually a gloss, which is interesting. We got that tube for the gas in, gas out. Hose for the shielding gas. Got a plug to be able to go down to 110. Plasma cutter, or no, TIG. Okay, so it does have a finger control. So this does come with a finger control, which is nice. This torch actually looks pretty dope. Got a manual. Not sure what this is. Oh, regulator. Teflon tape. Ground. Stick. Stinger. This is a bunch of fittings for the plugs on the back. Looks like some type of relay. An automobile relay, that's what it says. And the plasma cutter. Wow. This plasma cutter torch actually looks better than my Firstest MP 200. but it's weird. It's got a second wire right here. It says arc start. And it's got like a standoff, so you don't touch the tip, which is nice. The torch. This finger control unit pops off. This TIG torch looks actually dope. I might not need a foot pedal. Now let's start setting it up. Now I'm gonna hook up the regulator on the back of the machine. Now you're gonna put these fittings into the side of the regulator. You gotta put some Teflon tape on it first. Just thread it in. Throw the screw off top, pop it up in there. And then we're gonna take some of this hose. We're just gonna cut it to length. Awesome. Now the regulator is set up for the air compressor to the plasma cutter. So now we're going to do a first turn on. So I got it plugged in with the extension cord. I'm gonna fire it up. Fires up quick. It's pretty nice. So you got AC TIG, DC TIG, stick, the cut function plasma cutter with the air compressor, like outside air compressor. Then you have the plasma cutter with the onboard compressor. And you have options for 4T and 2T, which is nice with the cutting. Then you go to AC TIG and DC TIG. And those have options for 2T, 4T, or foot pedal. And also for AC TIG, you got a button right here. You press it and it goes to smart mode. So up here, you have the welding position. So you go from flat to vertical to overhead. So let's just say, let's see. Say we're at 200 volts, or 200 amps, excuse me. And let's see, go to smart. Interesting. So the smart mode cuts off. Oh, it's for the thickness. So over here you got aluminum thickness. Go all the way up to 3/16. So basically this, if you want to use this smart mode, you can. If not, you can just go right here and adjust the amperage. Or you can go to smart mode and choose the thickness, the 3/16, and then if you want to weld in vertical, you can switch it and the amperage will jump down. If you go overhead, it'll jump down even more. So that's not much, much of a significant jump. 5 amps there and 1 amp from vertical to overhead, but I'm not a professional, so I don't know what type of amperage you want to cut down when you go from flat to vertical to overhead. So, I mean, they've already done a lot of research and stuff, so I guess that might be pretty good. Or at least, it takes a lot of guesswork out of it for the people who don't know much. So it's as simple as it can get for as complicated as this can get. Because you got pre-gas, start, upslope, you got a bunch. Which I don't know how you adjust. Let's see, how do you adjust the, oh, here we go, the balance. It hurts. Okay, so you just press the center button until it gets to what you need to adjust. That's the amps, slope down, amps, the stopping amps, and then post gas. Oh wow, holy crap. You can do up to 15 seconds of post gas, post flow. You can do 15 seconds of pre-flow. Wow, that's a lot. That's pretty neat. But here's a look at some of the parts up close. So here is the TIG torch with the finger control. So you get a button up here and then amperage control right here, which is pretty nice. And then you have the plasma cutting torch. Looks pretty nice. This is just a basic stinger, nothing crazy. A pretty nice ground. As well as a gas hose for the TIG. Obviously an adapter to go to 110. Now we're gonna hook up the plasma cutter. this arc start terminal. Then we got the control. Switching it to cut compressor. Let's see. Huh. Maybe it only releases air if the arc strikes. Now I'm going to move it close to my truck. So we got everything set up for plasma cutter. We got the ground on the workpiece. We have the hose that goes from the built-in air compressor through the regulator and then back into the machine for the plasma cutter. And here it is. Here's the pilot arc. Pretty sick. No hose hooked up to the welder. It's pretty sweet. I had no problem blasting that out. Now granted, this is fairly thin metal, but whew, it just... So I don't trust myself cutting the exact size hole that I need. So this washer is slightly smaller, so I'm gonna cut it out and actually use it as a guide with the plasma cutter, and then I'm gonna use like a carbine bit and just Dremel out the rest of it, and it should be good at that point. I mean, a big drill bit would be ideal, but I'm just trying to show y'all what this thing can do, because that's pretty thick metal. So I'm gonna blast through it first and then go around the ring, and it's gonna be crazy. So let's do it. But before we do that, we wanna make sure both the batteries are disconnected because we don't want to damage any of the electrical system on this truck, especially none of these computers, nothing. Also, I'm using some cardboard back there to prevent sparks from flying on any of my components in the truck. Oh, yeah. So the reason I was having an issue with the arc initially was because I was actually too far away from the base metal. So that's why it wasn't actually cutting as it should. So that was my issue. Once you're close enough, man, the thing cuts like butter, especially at 45 amps. Now I gotta cut out this section, chop it here, chop it here, chop it here, and then chop it down here. And I'm going to put a flat piece inside. It'll be recessed, and I'll need to do basically box it in. And I'm gonna use this angle that's held in by these magnets, which are really nice. And then I'm just gonna use that as a guide to get some really nice straight cuts, hopefully. So let's do it. Man, that built-in air compressor is so cool. Cardboard burns up pretty quick. So we're done with plasma cutting, so we're gonna set up the TIG torch. So we're gonna disconnect everything for the plasma cutter. And if you can see, there's a picture down here that shows the TIG torch. I'm going to put the finger control in, plug it in. We're going to connect this to where the plasma cutter was. Now we're going to put the consumables in the torch. Going to put the tip on, the cup, this one in, and the tungsten is pretty small, so I can actually use the stubby knob. There we go. Now we're going to get some gas hooked up to it. We'll get some nice clean filler rods, and then we'll tack those plates on there, then to get the sides cut out and just weld everything. Now I'm going to connect the gas. Now this machine doesn't come with a regulator, so you will have to buy that separate as well. But, you know, it's not that expensive. It's like 15 bucks if you want to buy one. Turn the machine on. Now I'm going to switch it to DC TIG because we're welding on mild steel, so AC would be for aluminum. And then we're going to probably bump this up to, let's just say, just do 175. It's pretty thick. And then we also have the finger control, so if we want to bring the amperage down, we can. See, post gas, let's do 6 seconds. Pre-gas, let's do 3 seconds. But anyway, we can finish prepping up these surfaces, and then we can clean it up with some like prep all or something, make sure there's no contaminants, and we can weld it. It's definitely going to take me a second to get used to this. But I can see how it's nice. It's not awful. The amperage is probably still too high too. So we're going to weld this in here to finish boxing it in. So I got the last pieces in there, just got to weld them in. Now, they definitely aren't the most beautiful thing, but it is what it is. This bumper is already really rusty, so I'm not too worried about it. Plus, the welds aren't going to look super great because I'm not used to this finger control TIG torch. So I'll try my best, but you know, this one isn't awful, but it isn't great at the same time. So anyway, let's weld it up. And one thing I just figured out is if you have this torch on 2T or 4T, the only thing that works on the torch is the button. You don't have this dial working. So you have to switch it to the foot pedal mode, even though this is not a foot pedal. I guess it's referring to like a potentiometer style dial or control. So you have to switch it to the foot pedal, But then the button works as a 2T. So you have to hold it down while you arc strike and mess with the dial, which is a little odd, unless I haven't figured it out. I might be able to do a 4T, not sure, but so far that is what I've seen. But the dial works pretty good. I've messed with it a little bit. It does control a lot of amperage, so you can go down pretty low if you need to, and go obviously all the way to max if you need to. But it might take me some getting used to since I come from a foot pedal, obviously, but you know, it still welds pretty good. Obviously I could be better at welding. I'm just some Joe Schmo that welds on stuff that I have because I like to save money. If you can weld, this thing does pretty good. Golly. Drill bit grabs, that's for sure. Golly. There we go. Oh yeah. Sensor in. Yes. Heck yeah. Oh, that looks factory. So now I'm gonna cut a hole right here in the top of the bumper to be able to put this receiver hitch in there. Except I'm gonna chop it off like right here, and it's just gonna stick barely inside. So it's not gonna be able to hold a ton of weight, but I don't need it to hold, you know, 1,500 pounds. It's just gonna be holding maybe a small, light, like dirt bike or something like that. And with some, you know, perimeter welds around here and some perimeter welds on the back, then it should be more than sturdy to be able to handle a 200-pound bike, 300-pound max. So anyway, let's go ahead and mark this area out, find center, and then cut right below it, and then cut this where we want it, and then slap it in there. I was planning on putting this bolt behind to have this basically flush, but I think it would stick too far back in the bumper to where the it might hinder the winch, because I do plan on buying a winch soon. There's a huge gap in there for a winch. So anyway, let's go ahead and mark this out and cut it out. Also got a bunch of stuff protecting it behind, so when I blow through, it just hits wood and it doesn't hit my radiator, my condenser, nothing like that. Look at that. Perfect. Let's see if the receiver fits in there. Oh. A little play, but it works. Now we're gonna rock the MP200 and MIG it. Powered on. Put the clamp on. You can tell that the clamp for the CT 2050 is significantly better. The one that came with the MP200 is a little bit cheaper, but it is a $600 cheaper machine. I have a couple of these magnets holding it 90 degrees this way, and then some on the bottom holding it 90 degrees this way, so it should be good. Whew. Forgot to turn it off grind mode. Yikes. I'm blinding myself. Can't see no more. Unfortunately, I had to fill the corner in a little bit after the fact because I didn't get all the way up into the where it was cut with the plasma cutter. So that's unfortunate because it looks a little ugly, but the verticals look pretty good. The overhead looks pretty good. I mean, none of it's perfect, but it looks pretty decent. I'll probably finish the welding on the back whenever I take the bumper off to paint everything. I'll just weld it up real quick. Now I am trying to mount the LED light bar that I bought for this truck a while ago on the bull bar underneath. So I got the mounts that came with it, and I extended them all the way to here, marked it, and then I got a cap of a spray paint can, which is around the same diameter. I think it's almost exactly the same diameter, if not really close. And I used it to make a circle. So that is going to wrap around the pipe, and I'm gonna make 2 of these, and then I'm gonna cut that out obviously, and then I'm gonna sit it up on there, sit it where I want it, and then weld it in, and then drill some holes, and be good. That's hot. I clamped them together and then ran them on the sander so they're even. Drilled a hole so we can bolt it up to the light bar, try to find center, and then weld her up. So it's actually gonna look really good. I might try to turn it a little bit further back so it's more behind this pipe than anything, because I don't want it to be in the way. I might cock it back like that. So now that I tested out the DC TIG function on my truck as well as the plasma cutter, I'm gonna see how it does on aluminum. Now beware, I'm not a professional aluminum welder. I know the basics, and I have welded stuff that I needed to. That's why I got that machine, so I could weld on these sport bikes. But I'm probably going to use the pulse function, which I'm also not familiar with. So that will be interesting, because I don't really feel like the potentiometer control is very usable on this TIG torch, because you have to keep the button held down while adjusting it. So it's a 2T button function as well as adjusting. So it's just very difficult to do both. The button works fine if the 2T and then the 4T works great, but I just don't see how this is super usable, especially if you have gloves on. So I would opt for the foot pedal or a different type of potentiometer control. My brother-in-law has one that you switch on, and it's basically like the button's pressed in when you switch it on, and then you basically can adjust it, you know, the amperage from there. And then you can push it all the way down to turn it off. So I like that design a little bit more. I would have a difficulty with doing this. Now, obviously, you know, you could do this, hold it down like this, and adjust it like this. And you could probably get used to it and actually use it very well. But for me, right now, I can't do that. I'm gonna have to get a lot of practice in before I can actually use this potentiometer setup with the 2T and the adjustment going. So I'll probably just use this as a 4T right now and then set the pulse on. Again, not familiar with the pulse, so I'll have to just try to learn as I go. But anyway, we'll see. Let's do it. And I gotta try to hurry up this test because I don't have much shielding gas left. It's like 10, 12 PSI, so let's try to do it quick. So we're gonna do smart mode. We're gonna go to probably 14 gauge. I don't know what this is. This aluminum is pretty thin. It's not 1/8 inch. So we'll just say 14 gauge. And we're gonna be welding the flat position. So let's see how this does. Now I wish I did know the exact thickness so we could see how good this does. But now we're gonna set the balance. We'll do, oh okay, it actually automatically set the balance too. Interesting. So 30 balance, 85 hertz. So yeah, let's go on there smart mode and see how it does. And it actually is giving me certain post gas too. Interesting, okay. So we'll let the smart mode do its thing and see how it does. But I'm actually gonna turn on the pulse mode and see if it can still be on the smart function. Okay, so it looks like we're still on smart, because you try to adjust this, it'll turn it off. So let's turn that back on. So we do have the pulse function. Again, I'm not too familiar with pulse, so we'll just start there. We'll do 10 pulses. Wish me luck. Actually, I do not like that. I think I need to do more pulses and maybe a ground actually on it. Let's do 40 pulses. Obviously, I could be better, but it looks pretty decent. Try one more time. Looks like the cleaning action is pretty aggressive. Let's turn pulse off, actually. Pulse is off. Let's try it again. Yeah, the cleaning action is pretty aggressive. I'm going to turn the smart mode off. Go down to like 25 balance and do like 120 hertz. We'll leave it on 55. Yeah, I actually like that a little bit better. Probably could increase the cleaning action a little bit, but now the smart function isn't bad. But I think that if you get a lot of experience TIG welding aluminum, you probably could fine tune it a little bit better. But it welds great, actually. Now let's try it on some thicker metal. Let's bump this up. Let's do smart mode again. Bump this up to 1/8 inch, and we'll do smart mode for this one. Nah, this is thicker than that. We'll just go bump that up to 3/16. It's not hardly doing anything. Definitely way too much. We'll bump it down probably around 120 amps, maybe 130. And then we'll change the cleaning action to 25, do 60 hertz. Actually, it's not that bad. Started getting a little too hot at the end, but bump it down a little bit, probably 115. Probably increase the cleaning action a little bit, 27 or something. That actually looks pretty good. It's actually pretty good. And I was actually going from pretty thin stuff to pretty thick stuff, and I didn't change the tungsten. All I did was change the amperage. So with all that considered, I mean, it looks pretty good. Now, obviously, if I had more experience aluminum welding, I probably could tune this machine in a little bit better. My knowledge is very limited, but, I mean, overall, I mean, like, that's pretty nice dimes. It's a little shiny in this area. The cleaning action went pretty far out, but, you know, I think that's all right. Probably could work on a little bit, but this is not too bad. This is like more of a just like a huge caterpillar. That one was pretty ugly. But this was on the smart setting initially, and this is when I took it off the smart setting, and adjusted it a little bit more to my liking. And it's pretty good. It's pretty good, not too bad. Now again, you know, probably could do better if I learned a little bit more first. That is actually gonna be it for testing the functions of this machine. So far, this CT2050 is pretty sweet. The only gripe that I have about it is that finger control. Now, if they were to make a finger control that you could do 4T, you press it, let go, and then you adjust the amperage, that would be sweet. There are other ones on the market like that. My brother-in-law actually made one from scratch. But the other easier option would just be buy a foot pedal. So it's not a huge deal, and you can actually figure that out. You can do that, but I just don't like the idea of, you know, taking time to learn that when I can just buy $100-something foot pedal and be done with it and still have the same functions as my Everlast and be able to have the same amperage control. Again, you could get used to it, but it is just a little weird right off the bat. But other than that, I mean, the machine works great. The plasma cutter works great. The compressor is super awesome to be able to have that on board. The only downside is it doesn't have MIG. Now it's got AC/DC TIG, and that's awesome. But I gotta say, their MP200 is pretty sweet. Their MIG function on that machine is amazing. The welds are just, it's super easy to weld with it. So you gotta really know what you want. If you want to weld a lot of aluminum, you're gonna have to get the CT2050. You can't weld aluminum with this at all. But if you want a mostly MIG machine, as well as a plasma cutter, this MP200 is pretty sweet. You got MIG, TIG, stick, and plasma cutter. But the TIG function is only lift start. This one's actually high frequency start. So it's a little bit different. You can't use a foot pedal on this machine. It's a little bit more basic TIG, but it works. It works fine. So if you're not gonna use TIG much, you might wanna go with the $600 cheaper option. But if you wanna do a lot of TIG, the CT2050 is definitely your machine of choice because, I mean, you can do it aluminum, you can do steel, stainless steel, titanium, anything basically. You can have a foot pedal, finger control, as opposed to the MP200, you just got lift start. It's pretty basic. You can't really do much amperage control other than, you know, the actual machine itself. It just depends on what you want. Plus, this CT2050 having the built-in air compressor is a super awesome option. It's just one less thing you have to worry about either buying or having working. I mean, I have a pretty crazy setup here for air compressor. I got a really old air compressor with a volume tank and the air hoses run up. And then I got coming over here to a reel. It would be so much nicer if you don't use an air compressor much just to have the built-in one on the machine. So you just gotta figure out what you want. And if you do wanna get one of these machines, I have a discount code in the description. It's BENJAMMINOUT. Use it on the YESWELDER website and it'll get you a discount. And it also gives me some kickback too, so, you know, if y'all wanna do that too, I appreciate it. But anyway, till next time, catch you on the flip side.